Sing me a song of a lass that is gone, safe that last behind. Mary of soul, she sailed on a day over the sea to sky. Billow and breeze, islands and seas, mountains of rain and sun. All that was good, all that was fair, all that was me is gone. Sing me a song.
WallByrd Theater presents a call-time production of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Chapter 10. The Lobster Quadrille. The Mock Turtle sighed deeply and drew back one of flapper across her eyes. She looked at Alice and tried to speak, but for a minute or two sobs choked her voice.
Same as if she had a bone in her throat,
said the Gryphon, and it set to work shaking her and punching her in the back. At last, the Mock Turtle recovered her voice, and, with tears running down her cheeks, she went on again.
You may not have lived much under the sea.
I haven't.
And perhaps you were never introduced even to a lobster.
Alice began to say,
I once tasted
but checked herself hastily and said,
No, never.
So you can have no idea what a delightful thing a lobster quadrille is.
No, indeed. What sort of a dance is it?
Why, you first form into a line along the seashore.
2 lines.
cried the Mock Turtle.
Seals, turtles, salmon, and so on. Then, when you've cleared all the jellyfish out of the way...
That generally takes some time,
interrupted the Gryphon.
You advance twice.
Each with a lobster as a partner.
Of course, advance twice, set to partners.
Change lobsters and retire in same order.
Then, throw the
lobsters!
shouted the Gryphon with a bound in the air.
As far out to sea as you can.
Swim after them!
Turn a somersault in the sea!
cried the Mock Turtle, capering wildly about.
Change lobsters again!
yelled the Gryphon at the top of its voice.
Back to land again! And that's all the first figure,
said the Mock Turtle, suddenly dropping her voice. And the 2 creatures, who had just been jumping about like mad things all this time, sat down again very sadly and quietly and looked at Alice.
It must be a very pretty dance.
Would you like to see a little of it?
Very much indeed.
Come, let's try the first figure,
said the Mock Turtle to the Gryphon.
We can do without lobsters, Which shall sing?
Oh, you sing.
I've forgotten the words.
So they began dancing round and round Alice, every now and then treading on her toes when they passed too close, and waving their forepaws to mark the time, while the Gryphon sang this.
Will you please pick up the pace, set a whiting to a snail? There's a porpoise close behind who's treading on my tail. See how eagerly the lobsters, turtles all advance. They're waiting on the shingles. Will you come and join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you join the dance? You can really have no notion how fun it will be when they take us lobsters and throw us out to sea. But the snail replied too far and gave a look askance. Said he thanked the whiting, but he would not join the dance. Would would not join the dance. Could not join the dance. What matters it how far we go, his scaly friend replied. There's another shore, you know, on the other side. The further off from England, then the nearer is to France. Turn not pale, beloved snail, but come and join the dance. Will you, won't you, won't you join the dance? Will you, won't you, won't you join the dance?
Thank you. It's a very interesting dance to watch,
said Alice, feeling very glad that it was over at last.
And I do so like the curious song about the whiting.
Oh, as to the whiting, you've seen them, of course.
Well, yes, I've often seen them at dinner.
She checked herself hastily.
I don't know where Din may be, but if you've seen them so often, of course, you know what they're like.
I believe so. They have their tails in their mouths and they're all over crumbs.
You're wrong about the crumbs. Crumbs would all wash off in the sea, but they have their tails in their mouths. And the reason is...
Here the mock turtle yawned and shut her eyes.
Tell her about the reason and all that,
she said to the Gryphon.
The reason is that they would go with the lobsters to the dance. So they got thrown out to sea. So they had to fall a long way. So they got their tails fast in their mouths. So they couldn't get them out again. That's all.
Thank you. It's very interesting. I never knew so much about a whiting before.
Oh, I can tell you more than that if you like. Do you know why it's called a whiting?
I never thought about it. Why?
It does the boots and shoes.
The Gryphon replied very solemnly. Alice was thoroughly puzzled.
Does the boots and shoes?
She repeated in a wondering tone.
Why, what are your shoes done with? I mean, what makes them so shiny?
Alice looked down at them and considered a little before she gave her answer.
They're done with blacking, I believe.
Boots and shoes under the sea are done with a whiting. Now you know.
And what are they made of?
Alice asked in a tone of great curiosity.
Soles and eels, of course.
The Gryphon replied rather impatiently.
Any shrimp could have told you that.
If I'd have been the whiting,
said Alice, whose thoughts were still running with the song,
I'd have said to the porpoise, keep back, please. We don't want you with us.
They were obliged to have him with them. No wise fish would go anywhere without a porpoise.
Wouldn't it, really?
Of course not. Why, if a fish came to me and told me he was going a journey, I would say, with what porpoise?
Don't you mean purpose?
I mean what I say.
The mock turtle replied in an offended tone, and the Gryphon added,
Come, let's hear some of your adventures.
I could tell you my adventures, beginning from this morning,
said Alice a little timidly.
But it's no use going back to yesterday, because I was a different person then.
Explain all that.
No, adventures first. Explanations take such a dreadful time.
So Alice began telling them her adventures from the time she first saw the white rabbit. She was a little nervous about it just at first. The two creatures got so close to her, one on each side, and opened their eyes and mouths so very wide. But she gained courage as she went on. Her listeners were perfectly quiet, till she got to the part about her repeating, "You are old Father William" to the caterpillar, and the words all coming different. And then the mock turtle drew a long breath and said,
"That's very curious."
"It's all about as curious as could be."
"It all came different,"
the mock turtle repeated thoughtfully.
"I should like to hear her try and repeat something now. Tell her to begin."
She looked at the Gryphon as if she thought it had some kind of authority over Alice.
Stand up and repeat. 'Tis the voice of the sluggard."
How the creatures order one about and make one repeat lessons. I might as well be in school at once.
However, she got up and began to repeat it, but her head was so full of the Lobster Quadrille that she hardly knew what she was saying, and the words came very queer indeed.
"'Tis the voice of the lobster," I heard him declare. "You have baked me too brown, I must sugar my hair. As a duck with its eyelids, so he with his nose trims his belt and his buttons and turns out his toes."
Later editions continued as follows. "When the sands are all dry, he is gay as a lark, and will talk in contemptuous tones of the shark. But when the tide rises and sharks are around, he has a timid and tremulous sound."
That's different from what I used to say when I was a child.
"Well, I never heard it before, but it sounds uncommon nonsense."
Alice said nothing. She had sat down with her face in her hands, wondering if anything would ever happen in a natural way again.
"I should like to have it explained."
She can't explain it.
Said the Gryphon hastily.
Go on with the next verse.
"But about his toes, how could he turn them out with his nose, you know?"
"It's the first position in dancing,"
Alice said, but was dreadfully puzzled by the whole thing and longed to change the subject.
Go on with the next verse. It begins, "I passed by his god."
Alice did not dare obey, though she felt sure it would all come wrong, and she went on in a trembling voice.
I passed by his garden and marked with one eye how the owl and the panther were sharing a pie."
Later editions continued as follows. "The panther took pie crust and gravy and meat, while the owl had the dish as its share of the treat. When the pie was all finished, the owl, as a boon, was kindly permitted to pocket the spoon, while the panther received knife and fork with a growl, and concluded the banquet."
"What is the use of repeating all that stuff?"
the mock turtle interrupted.
"If you don't explain it as you go on. It's by far the most confusing thing I ever heard."
Yes, I think you better leave off.
Alice was only too glad to do so.
Shall we try another figure of the Lobster Quadrille? Or would you like to hear another song from the mock turtle?
"Oh, a song, please, if the mock turtle would be so kind."
Alice replied so eagerly that the Gryphon said, in a rather offended tone,
No counting for tastes. Sing her turtle soup, will you, old fellow?"
The turtle sighed deeply and began, in a voice sometimes choked with sobs, to sing this.
Beautiful soup, so rich and green, waiting in a heart tureen. Who for such dainties would not stoop? Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, who cares for fish, game, or any other dish? Who would not give one else for two? Any worth of beautiful soul, any worth of beautiful soul.
Chorus again!
The Mock Turtle had just begun to repeat it when a cry of, "The trial's beginning!" was heard in the distance.
Come on!
Cried the Gryphon, and, taking Alice by the hand, it hurried off without waiting for the end of the song.
What trial is it?
Alice panted as she ran, but the Gryphon only answered,
Come on!
and ran the faster, while more and more faintly came, carried on the breeze that followed them, the melancholy words.
Soup of the evening, beautiful, beautiful, soup